And so let's see how well I do this compared to George.
You can do it.
I can do it. Welcome to the Ham Radio Workbench Podcast. We are your bi-weekly deep dive on technical topics of interest to the amateur radio operator. No, this is not George. This is Vince, VE6LK. And boy, this is as much a treat for you as it is for me. If this is your first time on listening to Ham Radio Workbench or watching us on YouTube with this edition, thank you for joining us. We have over 230 episodes in our back catalog. Thank you for coming along with us this evening. You can find us at www.hamradioworkbench.com. You can connect with us on Facebook group, Ham Radio Workbench. You can find us on Discord with our new Never Expires Discord link. Boy, I'm really twisting my tongue tonight. Found on the hamradioworkbench.com website. You can find us on the Brandmeister Talk Group 31075 and All-Star Node 55915. And now you can find us on Ham Shack Hotline at extension 94156, which is connected to our All-Star Hub. So this evening, we have a couple of announcements. We just have one announcement that our power strips are back in stock at DigiKey. Go and look for HRWB-101. And you will find the power strip there, and DigiKey will ship it to you nice and promptly. So our guest this evening on today's show, we are talking about product design with Richard Desaulniers VE2 Delta X-ray. Richard has been licensed since 1990. He has a background in emergency communications, serving at disaster events in Quebec in 1996, 97, and 98. He enjoys hunting DX, doing island activations, and participating in D-expeditions. Richard, first and foremost, is an experimenter, and he founded VE2DX Electronics in 2020. With the founding of the company, he really wanted to create inexpensive and simple electronic products to help the ham radio community. Among his creations are products like the True TTL, the True CIV, and the True CAT, implemented and those concepts were all implemented and applied to all of his designs and his creations, and he works on eliminating problems with RFI, EMI, signal loss, and other issues. Boy, we've got a lot of things to talk about tonight with respect to hardware design. Richard, good evening and welcome aboard. Thank you for being here.
Great to be here.
All right, real good. And joining us this evening, we also have Thomas, K4SWL. Hi, Thomas.
Hey guys, hope everyone's doing well.
What's new in your world, Thomas?
Well, a lot of chainsawing. That's been the theme. That's been my theme since last September. But it's been full bore for the past 2 weeks. Just a lot of chainsawing. So all my clothes smell like chainsaw fuel and that sort of thing. But hey, it's really pretty outside. It's been great weather for getting work done, and so I'm pretty happy about that.
And I hope it's warming up for you.
It is warming up. It's feeling very spring-like right now, and we had some pretty icy weather. And when you've got compromised roads, that's not a great thing. When you have roads that have no guardrails on them, which they still don't, and they're steep and curvy, it's a little dodgy. So we're happy that things are, kind of moving along.
All right. Well, glad to have you here. All right. Well, Richard, as you're our guest of honor this evening, tell us, Richard, what's on your workbench?
Well, this week it's mostly trying to get the finalized version of the firmware for the our new band decoder family. We've been working a lot on those, and this is our board design based on the ESP32, and it's been giving me some headaches. Got stuck actually for almost a week and a half on a truly simple communication issue with the cat communication, but that took a lot of time and a lot of pressure on the designer.
Well, pressure makes diamonds, right? And
Yes.
so how'd you overcome those issues?
Well, it was actually interesting because bottom line, the issue was that the cat information was coming in garbage, what should have been, let's say, a 1 and a 0 and a 1, which in ASCII would have been 48 and um, 49, would come up 7 fox, 7 dog. And I haggled with it back and forth and thought there was a communication issue or interface issue, or look at hardware, look at software, looked at everything. And the software process testing in ESP32 is very simple. So I took the big program out of the way, put a small one in, and was just trying to decode it. It didn't make any sense. And after about a week and a half, I figured out that actually got the piece of paper right here. Hey, this you're gonna love this. Well, I don't know if you're gonna be able to see it properly, but what you got on this side here is what I was getting, and what you got on this side is what I was supposed to get.
Which is like the opposite, basically, almost.
Exactly, except it's a 1 bit more than that. Okay. It was literally the opposite, bitwise. Mm-hmm. But you had to shift it by 1 to the left and add a 0 in front of it to get the proper results. And once I did figure that out, I went, okay, and that took me a week and a half. Once I did figure that out, I went, okay, what's going on here? It's upside down. There's got to be something wrong. The configuration was the way it was supposed to be. And I sent the feelers out to a couple of groups and a couple of friends, including my nephew. He shoved it on ChatGPT, and ChatGPT came back and said, "Oh, just put at the end of the definition for the serial port true." By putting true there, it basically flips it.
Oh my goodness!
And everything started working.
Oh my!
It's called How to Lose a Week and a Half That You Did Not Want to Lose.
The funny part was I was going to ask you if you discovered the issue while you were in bed in the middle of the night and you woke up. There. Because that happened. I used to do application development back when I worked for Corning. That was one of my jobs. Later was doing application development, and I was working with multiple databases and things and interactions between them. And sometimes I just could not get things to fit. It was like having 2 Lego blocks that wouldn't fit together. And I remember so many times I would consternate. I would think about it and think about it. I'd work a whole day on some little issue like that. But I go to bed at night. I'd wake up in the morning and I'd be like, "Oh, that's what it is." And it's like my brain had to let go of it for a while.
Problem is, it wakes me up. The good news is my wife likes to read in bed while I'm sleeping. So what ends up happening most of the time is I will wake up with, "Oh yeah, that's the solution," and I will go, "Michelle, okay, send me a messenger text. Here's what you're going to put in there." And she looks at me, she says, "You want me to write what?"
That's great.
So that does happen with solutions, but also with new ideas. And new ideas are a problem. Too many of them. Way too many of them.
I tell you what, looking at your website, I can tell you have a lot of ideas because you've got a lot of products. So, yeah.
And the ones that are in the work, I literally don't have time to touch them. I've got a Atis antenna interface that I've been working on since 2020. It's been working in the lab since 2020. I just don't have time to put it to market. You got plenty of ideas like that I touch base on. I always tell the same thing to the guys. I mean, obviously my company is not a non-for-profit. I need some money to come in to stay afloat, and especially with the floods last August, it's not easy to stay afloat. We were hoping to be in the red in January 2025. It's going to be pushed over, but probably by about a year because of the flood last August. So with all of that, the idea is to try to do some development to bring new products to market, but also try to push the products that are there to finance the rest of the the business. And when I meet people at, whether it's Orlando, Dayton, Boston, or wherever, hopefully next year or Germany, when I meet people, I always tell them the same thing. If you got an idea, come up to us. We'll be happy to sit down with you. We're going to say no at least 5 times. Okay. The first 5 times you're going to call me about this, and I'm going to tell you, do call me about it 5 times, because on time number 6, I'm going to be saying no 5 times. And then on time number 6, I'm going to go, On number 7, I'm going to show you a prototype. the SDR switch, I know that you were talking to me offline about the SDR switch, these guys. And the SDR switch, the whole project showed up on my desk a week before we left in 2023, November 2023, a week before we left to go to Europe. We were going to Europe for some reason, don't ask me, to see Christmas villages, and in France and the UK. And I went, the wife's and our girlfriend wanted to do this, and I went, you got to be crazy. I mean, let's go to Austria and Germany, not France and UK. But they insisted. So we went to France and UK. Well, I've got a very big partner in the UK, ML&S, and Gary, who's the technical advisor over there, contacted me because we had made arrangements for me to stop by when we were going to be in London and do a video. And he called me up a week before we left, and he said, 1708, MFJ-1708. He says, we cannot get those. There used to be a great replacement in the UK. The guy died, and we can't get it anymore. You got to make a product for us, Richard. And I went, okay, what's a 1708? So I sat down. Looked at the 1708, looked at some of the other products, came up with a design of my own, drafted a statement of work and a first drawing. And 2 weeks later, when I showed up at his office, I put it in front of him. I said, is this what you want? And he looked at me, he says, yes. When?
Wow.
When and how much and how many can I get? Yeah.
Yeah. And so it took us about a little bit less than a year, because we got delayed again because of last August, but we got it to market. We got the first 2 versions out now, and I'm finalizing dual receive versions for both product. That should come out in April. And then SDR Play approached us, and we're working on the design for a whole different approach. Well, not a different approach. Basically, it's like 2 SDR TR switches together. The goal is to not only manage 2 boxes, or the dual box that SDR Play has, but also to protect them. One of the problems that you're encountering with multiple inputs is that when the radio transmits, sometimes the unused input is going to blow because of the RF. So the goal is to have a box that's totally integrated, and whenever one transmitter goes online, it protects everybody. And that's what we did with the first box. Now we are going to do a larger box that's going to be designed for those multiple input SDR Play boxes. So we tried to work with regular hams and work with manufacturers, whether it's Flex, SDR Play, Electraf, whoever. We sit down with these guys and try to come up with some new ideas and put them to market. The problem is I'm running out of 24 hours,
You just need a new planet. That's the problem.
Yeah,
One
yeah.
with longer days, you know.
One with longer days.
I'm looking at this product actually online, and it's really great. It's great that you could come up with a prototype that quickly too. That's kind of amazing, because it's a really useful product. That TR switch for SDRs, there wasn't a whole lot else like it, and MFJ, those were very popular. So
Yeah.
that's fantastic that you're able
Yeah.
to make something here in North America, and you're also working with companies. We love SDR Play. They were on
Yeah.
last year, I believe, and
Yeah. That's right.
wonderful little company. So it's great that you're working with all those guys in MLNS as well. Um,
Lynchies.
yes,
Lynchies.
yes,
Yes,
Yeah.
yes.
Right
yeah.
on.
Started with the father. Now the kids are running the company, and they're doing a great job.
Oh,
Richard,
the Suns are running the cover. That's awesome. Go ahead, Thomas.
can I ask you something that it's has nothing to do with your workbench, but I was listening to your intro and you said you worked a lot of income, especially in the latter part of the 1990s. So I have to assume that you were in Quebec during those big ice
Yes,
storms,
I was
right?
in charge of communication for the Quebec government body, RACI, which is the
Hmm.
provincial association, and I was a emergency coordinator for the western part of the province.
Hmm.
We got the storm itself, the ice storm, started on the 6th of January. And the storm itself on the 6th, which was a Wednesday, hit the Montreal area. Around 4 p.m., we got called. At 4:30, I was at the emergency station, put the network on the air, uh, and we had 700 ham radio operators on air, ready to go in 12 separate networks across the western part of Quebec.
Very impressive.
Uh, yeah, and we had all kind of stuff going on. It was totally incredible. And you have to remember, and that's one of the things that I've learned, and that I had to explain to some groups, that the job of the ham radio operator in emergency communication is not to influence the decision makers.
Yeah.
The job is to transport the message. We
Hmm.
had message like, in French, les patates sont cuites, the potatoes are
Hmm.
cooked.
Hmm.
And you couldn't ask what that meant. One point on Saturday morning after the three storms, because the whole thing was three storms, the worst one being on the Friday. And Saturday morning, they came up to me and they said, "We need one guy sitting in La Prairie, which is a small community on the South Shore, and we need it on that corner in a car, and make sure his fuel tank is full, and we need it parked exactly this way." And I said, "Okay, so what is he doing? Who does he talk to? What do you need to know?" And the response was, "He will know, nothing else."
Wow,
And yeah,
Okay.
yeah, that was fun.
still
So
a
we
lot to go
convinced
on.
the guy, to go sit over there. And after 6 hours, the guy, called in and he was yelling at my operator. And I took the mic and I went, you need to call it. We know you've been there for 6 hours. It's obviously very hard to find somebody to replace you. We just need you to hang on until we find someone else. And he came back on the mic and he went, "Yeah, but ta ba click, nothing else." Uh, if you're from Quebec, you understood clearly what the guy was going to say. If you're not, it was like, oh,
Yes,
They were very bad words, ladies and
I knew
gentlemen. They're potty
exactly.
mouth words.
Let's just say they're potty mouth.
yes,
Yeah.
yes. Let's put a beep here. And the guy hung up the microphone, and we tried to call him back once, no answer. Twice, no answer. Three times, no answer. Now we're worried. We're getting ready to
Sure.
send literally the army, because it was not the cops in these type of emergencies. It was the army.
Hmm.
And he finally got back to us and he just went, "Okay, tell them it happened." And I went, "Okay." So I went back to
The
the master
potatoes are
coordinator.
cooked, right?
Yeah,
That's
basically.
right.
So I went back to the coordinator in chief, and I told him, I said, okay, the gentleman you wanted us over there, he called it in. He says it happened. And he says, thank you. Perfect. That's what I need to know. And I looked at him. I said, no, 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 no. This is a closed room. No one knows what we're talking about. You're please gonna tell me what the heck this guy just saw. It ended up that the gentleman was sitting so in a way that on Highway 132 on the South Shore of Montreal, there's in the middle of the highway, there's a series of very large electrical posts, 735 kVA.
Oh,
And he was sitting in a way that the only thing he could see through his windshield was that
oh,
highway and those poles.
those
And they
lines.
knew 2 days before that these were not going to hold.
Yeah,
They just needed to know
Oh,
exactly
yeah,
when.
yeah.
And that's exactly what ended up happening is the guy saw all the posts
All
coming
of them
down.
went
Tuck,
down.
tuck, tuck, tuck.
Oh my goodness. I can only
like
imagine. See,
dominoes.
we had
Yeah, about a dozen of them, I believe. It
yeah,
was impressive. I mean, these are what 300, 200
yeah,
feet high. I mean,
yeah.
that's
Oh,
impressive.
Yeah, it was, I mean, you just know, I mean, the amount of infrastructure damage that level of
Oh,
icing can do is beyond belief.
it
And
was incredible.
we were really feeling for you guys back then. And I think about it even today, we had to deal with Hurricane Helene here.
Yes.
But like, that ice storm really had such a large footprint, when it happened. And
Yeah.
it took a long time to recover from it as well.
We had some fellow Americans that were showing up at the border
Mhm.
in buses, and basically the buses couldn't go any further. And they would call in, and the central dispatch would send us all the phone calls from people like that that were trying to reach other people. And they were asking us, can I get to this? I
Mhm.
said, well, first, it's going to be very difficult. And secondly, you're not going to find anybody because they're likely in a center somewhere else
Mhm.
or in an arena or wherever.
Mhm.
I mean, it was impressive. It took the Quebec government about 3 weeks to tell the ham radio operators, okay, guys, we got satellite cell phones all over the
We're
place.
good.
We're okay.
We're
We're
good
good.
now. Yeah.
So I was very, very proud. I mean, the technical stuff that came out of that.
Mhm.
I mean, this is what we're here to talk about tonight.
yep.
Well, one of the things that came out of that that was impressive is on the Friday night, I called my three technical gurus, RF guys, Bruno VE2DX, Richard VE2 Dog Juliet Echo, and Bert VE2BMQ. Rest in peace. I just, sorry, Alexa's having fun. Okay, let me back it up a little bit. Okay. Okay, so I called my three technical gurus, and which were Bruno VE2DX, Richard VE2 Dog Juliet Echo, and dear friend Bert VE2BMQ, who just died in January. And I told them, I said, guys, I need repeaters. You don't have radios, you don't have controllers, you don't have cavities, you don't have antennas, you
It's
don't
pretty
have
hard.
coaxes, you don't have a bunker, you don't have power, you don't have batteries, and you don't have generators. Find me some repeaters. And by the way, I need to be able to do this anywhere without you having to go there and put it together. And they called me back 30 minutes later and they said, we got a solution for you. I said, okay, great. He says, all you need is two cars, both equipped with cross-band repeat dual band radios. Park both of them about 100 feet apart. That's your cavity. Both cars have the antennas. Both cars have the batteries, the generators, the engine, the radios. Everything is in the cars. Now, link the two cars on the crossband repeat on a simplex frequency in UHF. Put a known repeater that's down, because we had lost about 5 or 6 repeaters
Sure.
at that point. And he says, put the input frequency on the first car in receive, put the output frequency on the second car in TX, and you got yourself a repeater. If you got some interference between the two of them, move them apart. That's all you need to do. So that's what I call ham radio. That to me
It's brilliant.
is what ham radio is all about.
I love
30
it.
Absolutely
minutes.
brilliant.
Yes.
Absolutely brilliant. Well, very good. Richard, I'm sure you're in the land of maple syrup, and you probably have some thoughts about, the maple syrup reserve and everything else going on with that. I had to ask. I had to ask.
So you heard about it. Yes. And I will not talk about it. Maple syrup is a project name over here that we started working on. It's gonna be huge. It's gonna be technically something that you've never seen. And
is it going to be sweet?
Yeah.
It's gonna be so sweet, my friend. Yeah, it's for the 705 market, which is a huge market, and it's something that people, when they see it in August when we come out with it, will be very, very, very interesting. And I'll give you guys the lead as soon as I'm ready to talk about it more, because now I don't want to talk about it too much.
Well, the project name like maple syrup, you can't go wrong.
Right.
I mean, honestly.
Exactly right.
And let me tell you, so for the listeners that don't live in this part of North America and aren't familiar, like Quebec, the province of Quebec is very much a big time maple syrup generator. And, and besides his project name, I've had my own experience when I've had my daughters, and we've traveled in Quebec quite extensively over the years, and I remember once on Ile d'Orléans, I took him into which is really close to Quebec City. I took him to a little maple syrup facility, which you find a whole lot of those around. And we happened to be like the only guests there that day. And I have these 2 cute little daughters that are maybe 8 years old or something. And it was in, let me think, this would have been probably like August or something like that.
Well, that's why you were alone.
And the woman that was running the store, she also had like a little bit of a museum tour thing that you would do, and there was like a maple syrup experience. And I said, sure, let's do that. I paid a few dollars and did that. And our daughters, she gave them so many maple syrup things that they were just absolutely wired by the time we left there.
So if you go to that same place in the spring, you will not be able to park your car over there.
I'm sure of that. I am sure of that. It was so much fun though, and to this day we keep joking because the woman was such a pusher of maple syrup that by the time you left, you were brainwashed into believing it could do anything. It could cure diseases. This stuff's amazing. And I have to admit, we absolutely we are purist with maple syrup. We only buy Canadian maple syrup, and we keep it stocked here in the house. We do the real stuff. So
good.
So great project name. I love it.
Right
I've got
on.
every intention of bringing a few cans to Dayton.
Oh, nice. Very nice. Could you bring some Chocolat Favoris as well?
You've been coming over here too often.
Oh, we actually have we do come over a whole lot, but this is also another thing if you ever go to Quebec, not that we're going down a rabbit hole that has nothing to do with amateur radio right now, but it does, because this is something you should do
this is
prior
something Ham
to
Radio
an
Workbench
activation.
does.
Yes. So I think it was, probably, I mean, we've been to Quebec so many times, but we went there once, and we have lots of friends, and they're almost like family that live there. And they had mentioned to us once, like, have you taken your daughters to Chocolat Favori? And I thought, I'd have never heard of this place. And they said, it's great. Just go there. And so they gave me a pinpoint on the map, and we went to one of the ones in Quebec City. And basically you go in this place and they sell soft serve ice cream. So the kind that you see come out of the machine, it's soft serve. They have a small cone, but a gigantic head on this ice cream. They can be so tall that you're like, that thing's going to topple over. And then they'll take it and they'll have something like 12 to 14 different chocolate and caramel fondues that they have there, and they'll dip the whole thing upside down in there,
Yes.
completely encapsulate the ice cream. It's like it's beyond physics how they do this. And the chocolate is so thick. You think you've had chocolate covered
Exactly.
ice cream before? You've not had chocolate covered ice cream. Like this stuff is,
It's almost a quarter of an inch.
it is. It's
It's
like a quarter of an inch
yeah,
thick.
yeah.
They give you a spoon, you crack the top of it, and you eat your way down. And it's like the best thing in the world. You come off with the biggest sugar high you've ever had in your life.
Oh, my
Now I gotta
A1C
ask.
number is climbing just thinking about this.
Oh, it's crazy. It's so wonderful.
I have to ask. Did you have to tie down the girls afterwards?
I did. Yeah. They my wife is all about organic and natural and everything. And so but my daughters, they're every time we go to Quebec, Chocolat Favoris is going to be there. We
Oh,
also find that we have our favorite patisseries and places like that we go to. And of course, they like poutine. And we have our favorite places we get that. I like to make it while I'm there as well. Because what we usually do is we go there, and I think I mentioned we go to some areas around Quebec City mainly because we sort of go off season and go to ski towns, and you can usually find condos there and stay there for a couple months at a time,
oh
and it's
yeah.
very affordable because there's a lot of supply and not a lot of demand, and so yeah, we have all these
Especially
little
just
rituals.
outside Quebec. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes, and
The
yeah.
for the as you guys know, I didn't do enough DX expedition as far as I'm concerned that I wish I could do a lot more. But for you guys from down south that want to do a fairly easy one, it's
Mhm.
the Zone 2, which is the Sept-Îles area.
Yeah,
And you basically, a big part of Quebec is along the St. Lawrence River. So basically, what you end up doing is you drive the north shore of the St. Lawrence River through Quebec City, through Sainte Anne,
yep,
Charlevoix, all
yep.
the way up to Sept-Îles, and then you get there for the 30th of October or whatever the end of the month of October is for the SSB DXCC contact, CQ Worldwide, sorry,
Hmm.
contest.
Hmm.
And that's fairly easy to do. Watch out for snow
Yeah,
sometimes around
yep.
that time,
Hmm.
but it's a fairly inexpensive way to do a good DX expedition in Zone 2. So little tip.
Very nice, and it's a pretty good highway up that area. At least I've been as far as Baie-Comeau. I haven't been up to Sept-Îles, but I was relatively
Yeah,
close.
yeah.
But
Now it's a little bit tougher above that, but it's not.
yeah,
It's still very good. It's pretty much
yeah.
the same thing as all the way up to Baie-Comeau. Once you get past Set Hill and further, you literally get to an area where the 148, that highway,
Hmm.
turns into gravel
Yeah.
at the end of it. But otherwise, it's nice and paved.
It's a wonderful province. I think that a lot of times people think of Canada and they think of British Columbia and a lot of the rocky coastline, and they think of the Maritimes, I have to say that Quebec is very interesting in that it has the along the St. Lawrence. I mean, you have things like a fjord. There's a fjord,
Yes, yes.
that you can see whales, you can see belugas, you can camp around those areas. The Saguenay Fjord is just beautiful, and the all along the coastline there, it's simply gorgeous, and you don't feel like you're even sometimes it doesn't even feel like North America, especially when you go along the
Oh.
Gaspé Peninsula as well. It's just gorgeous out that way. So that
Uh,
is a province people should explore a little bit more. I think it kind of gets forgotten because you think of other bigger places, and the big cities like
There's
Montreal and
plenty of
Toronto. And
beautiful places in North America, but
Mhm.
right now I think Vince is going to start yelling at us if we
He
don't
probably
start
will if we're
talking technical.
No, no, not at all. But Thomas, what's on your workbench, buddy?
Well, unfortunately, my workbench has been the tailgate of my truck, and it's been chainsaws. I have I've gotten to a point where I don't even bother sharpening my chainsaws. I just get professional chainsaw chains, and I use them, and then I'll try to sharpen them a little bit along the way, but I just replace them out when I'm done because we've been trying to get so much work done so quickly here. We're still trying to clean up a lot of tree debris, but we're really close to the end of it now, fortunately, of the main
Good.
stuff, of the stuff we wanted to get done. My shoulders hanging in there, thanks to physical therapy and stuff. But I know more about pulling apart chainsaws now than I've ever known before. I do have one chainsaw that needs to go to, as a buddy of mine says, the spa. It really needs to be just completely worked over. It's getting so ornery. It won't. Yeah, it's tough to work
Yeah,
with. My larger chainsaw is still working really well, but it's probably ready to rest for a little bit too, just like its operator.
sure.
So,
Yeah,
Yeah.
and so it's what, every 50 or 100 hours you should tear them
yep,
down and send them to the spa, right? I
yep,
don't know about you, but I keep two chains around, one on the saw and one hanging up in the package. And
yep.
when my chain gets dull, I just swap the chain out.
Yeah, yeah, because I find, especially now when we're under pressure to get this stuff done, get the debris down to the bottom of the road from all these down trees.
Yeah,
While FEMA is still picking it up, they're doing it, I think, until the end or to the beginning of April. So we're kind of want to get that going, and we're getting there now. We're actually getting to the point where we need to go back and repair all of the areas where, our skid steer's been running around doing things. We need to repair ditches. We need to uncover culverts, and then put gravel down on our driveway and all that stuff. And our driveway is about a tenth of a mile long or so, so it's not short. It's not
yeah.
super long. Um, but we got to do all that.
It's not super long.
It's
Mine's like 30 feet long. That's very long.
I feel for you guys. I mean, I've seen, literally bent trees after the
Mhm.
ice storms of 98
Yep,
till literally 2015. You could still see some of the bent trees.
yep.
And what you guys went through in that area is absolutely incredible. We actually have got a good friend in North Carolina, Jim, Whiskey Alpha 4 Yankee India Zulu in the Charlotte area, I believe.
Hmm.
And he took us in the area over there near Asheville. No.
Asheville, that's where I
Yeah,
live, close to Asheville.
yeah. And they used to go camping at what used to be a camping along a creek, which we don't know for sure, but we all assume is totally disappeared.
Hmm.
Creeks turn into large rivers,
Hmm.
literally, and what you guys went through is incredible.
There,
I
there
feel
were a
for you
lot of
guys.
campsites. There's a pretty large one that was very popular in Swannanoa it was completely wiped out.
Yeah,
I was just talking to somebody about this the other day. It makes you realize just how many businesses are near
yeah,
rivers. For whatever reason, there were a lot of businesses that we used to go to that were just wiped out. But the community is really strong, and things are starting to improve, and the community is getting together. We've actually been one of the things I've been trying to work on the side, but I've just been so busy with all of the tree work here because there's been a really big push for that. But I have been in communication with some local hams who work with the fire department, and we're trying to set up things to improve emergency communications, which were pretty good during the storm. But we're trying to get a GMRS network up and going. We've got the repeater. We need to harden it probably. The fire department wants to get on board, and those are all things in the background I'm working on as well with other people. And that's really exciting because and I'm sure with your experience with the ice storms, the reason I asked this is I was very aware of what happened with the ice storms because I worked with a telecommunications company that sent tons and tons of cable up there, and fiber optics and everything after the ice storm. But in our area too, there's just a lot of infrastructure that
yeah.
had to be replaced, that had to be worked on, and so that's what we've been doing. But I will say, on kind of a more positive note, I've been doing a lot of presentations lately. I have. That's what's been on my workbench is I've been preparing a lot of presentations. Radio clubs will sometimes ask me to speak, and I really enjoy doing that. And I try to do it if I can make it work in my schedule. I've had to push off a lot because of how busy I've been, and a lot of the schedules have been starting to hit in March. So right before recording the show, I had a great presentation with the Southwest Ohio DX Association. Yesterday, had a wonderful presentation to a great group of people with the Orilla Amateur Radio Club in Ontario. I think Vince, you were actually in that crowd
Yeah,
too, weren't you? Yeah.
Yeah, I had to come along and heckle you just a little bit.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. It wouldn't be the same. What a great group of people though, man.
They're so
That was
nice.
such a great group of people and really enjoyed it. And I got a few more presentations coming up, which I'm looking forward to. On the ham radio side, so I haven't been doing a whole lot bench wise, like with my soldering iron necessarily, but I am starting to kit up a dedicated field kit for my K1, my Elecraft K1. I think I mentioned on the last show that took it over to my buddy Vlado's house in 3CZ so that we could hook it up to a signal generator and I could calibrate it and got it nice and calibrated, took it out, did an activation, really enjoyed it. It was fun reacquainting myself with this wonderful little radio I had owned. I bought this one last year, but I'd owned a K1 for probably a year or two, back around 29, 20, or 2009, 2010, something like that. And it's always really fun for me to put together a specific field kit for a radio and make kind of a grab and go kit out of it,
Yeah.
that's fully self-contained. And the K1's a wonderful radio. It's got some great receiver and audio characteristics.
That's like a little square front with a big round VFO. Oh,
Yeah.
I don't know how my
It
camera
is.
does that. Big round VFO knob
Yeah,
and
yeah.
stuff. Yeah,
Yeah, it actually do. I have it here handy. I could show it because we're actually doing video right
yeah,
now, but I don't see it at the moment. But it is it looks like a mini K2,
yeah. Okay.
and
Yeah, yeah.
it
That's the same one I was picturing.
yeah, really small. It's a cute little radio, and it's. I think when you first get it, it looks a little bit bigger in photos and stuff. When I saw it in ads back in the early 2000s. I'd see it in an Elecraft ad and it looked like a little bit bigger radio, but you see it and it's just this cute little mini radio. And
Like two by
it's,
4 inches. Yeah.
yeah, and it's like four bands. Mine has a 4 band module. It has an internal battery option. It has a little ATU that's really effective. And so it's kind of fully self-contained. You know, you take it to the field, hook it up to a wire and a
Neat.
key, and you're on the air. Um,
Yeah, Eric and the guys at Electraft have been pushing out incredible products.
they
They
do.
really do a nice job.
And they really keep field operators in mind because, you know, Wayne is
Yes.
such a dedicated field operator. And so
Yeah.
that really works with me because that's where my heart is. Um, I did have another really cool thing happen this week was we finally replaced our Subaru that got smashed by a tree during the storm.
Oh,
And we replaced it
Okay.
with another Subaru. A friend of ours who's moving to a different state, moving across the U.S. actually, she sold us her Subaru Outback. It's a 2022 Subaru Outback, and so I'm in sort of the same spot George is right now. George just got a Subaru, but his is like a current model. But I'm now looking at it thinking, okay, how can I fit a mobile radio in this? And it's true that this design doesn't leave it limits you in what you can do, but I see possibilities there. And I want to find out. I think what I'm going to do, since George isn't on the show, I'm just going to wait and see what he decides to do, and then I'm just going to steal his idea.
behind
Because
the rear seat, buddy. Behind the
it'll
rear
be
seat. That's what I did with my Jetta. Yeah,
Hmm.
so I had some real struggles with putting stuff in my '06 Jetta, and I was trying to figure it out one day, and so I typed into the Google 2006 Jetta CB radio installation. Don't hate on me because I said CB. It's more common than ham
Yeah,
radio
sure it
when
is.
you're trying to look for these keywords, right? And I found some really great ideas. And so I
Wow.
adapted them and brought them into my own install. Now, my Jetta was blessed to have a utility cigarette power pole thing in the
Yeah.
back.
Hmm.
And the wiring looked like it could handle about 10 amperes on a good day. It was fused mysteriously for 20. So notwithstanding, I put a 7 amp diode on it so that backflow wouldn't be a thing. And I dropped a glass mat battery in the back
Hmm.
instead of putting windshield washer antifreeze fluid, in ostensibly the little cubby hole for it. And that's how I powered my radios. And all
Yeah.
the antennas were on the back, and I just brought the heads forward into the driver's compartment, and I just hung them on a plate on the back seat. So it made it real simple for me. So I mean, steal some of those
That's a clever
ideas,
idea. That's a
right?
really clever idea. I haven't looked to see under this car yet. It used to be I'd like to tuck things under the seats,
Sure.
some of the bodies and stuff. But with
But
now,
that's
like
where
if
you
you've
have
got
to
a
hide your radio kit when you're going camping and you're saying you're not bringing any radio kit.
There you
That's
go.
right. It
Because
takes
your
a
wife is looking in the spare tire holder.
So, Richard, there was a time when, in fact, I think it was the last time I went to Quebec, of all places. I Before I went, I was telling my wife and daughters because we were also going to do a lot of camping on this particular trip, and we had the Subaru Forester. It's like a 2018 Subaru Forester, not a massive car, but plenty big for us. We tend to pack kind of light. And I told him, I said, you can only bring one bag each. That's it. That is it. Keep your clothes to a minimum. We're going to have our own laundry facilities where we're staying. We do not need to take a whole bunch of stuff. Let's keep it really small and light and blah, blah, blah. And I did that. And then afterwards, I was thinking, oh, I wasn't thinking about my radio gear though, because usually I take like extra bags and stuff. And so I said, okay. And I remember I was thinking, I'm just going to take like one radio with me. And that's it. I'm only going to take one radio. And I think I even maybe said that out loud in front of my wife and daughters. And just to prove that I'm on board with this one bag idea, we actually had a we actually had like a Thule cargo thing on top of the car too, but that was completely filled with camping stuff for going camping. And I didn't even have room to put a radio up in there. But as I was loading the car, I picked up in the trunk area, I picked up the floor. There was like a little area where you could pick it up. And I saw all of this space around the spare tire. And it had little spaces built into this like little styrofoam cubbies that are built around the spare tire to hold emergency gear. And we had some emergency gear in there, but I thought, my MTR3B wouldn't take up much space in there. And so I started stuffing things, and I stuffed another radio underneath the seat. And so no one knew until I got to the destination that I had this contraband in the car. Fortunately, I didn't get searched at the border because they would have said, "Do you have anything, do you have anything else in the car?" Well, baby, just don't tell my
But
wife.
I'm surprised you guys don't use the spare radio service area in the car.
The spare radio service area.
Yeah, the SRS, in the dash in front of the right beside the driver there in the dash in front of the
Ah, yes.
passenger.
I should have.
Yeah,
Yes,
the
yes.
problem is when you use the SRS to hold a radio, an indicator light comes up on your dashboard and it gives it away. That's the problem.
Indeed,
So,
indeed.
yeah, the only other thing I've got coming up on the bench here pretty soon is I'm going to start taking apart, since we're on video, I can show you this.
Hmm.
This little guy, which is
Oh,
Oh,
the
it's
Index
my
Labs.
yes.
Index Labs QRP Plus, which is a little cubic. It looks like a little cube
I
almost. It's
love
not a
mine.
perfect cube, and it's such a wonderful little radio. Really nice big encoder on the front, simple LCD display, really simple ergonomics. Once you
Hmm.
know the combinations of double button presses and things, everything's like only really one menu item deep.
Yeah.
It's not a deep radio, but to save space, you have to do combinations of buttons to get certain things. But it's a really fun radio, and I took this guy on the air a couple of weeks ago and had a wonderful activation. Worked some DX, had a great time, but it was also chirping a bit. So I mentioned this on my blog. Unfortunately, a lot of people chimed in after I posted the video and said, "Oh, there's actually a fix to that. It probably hasn't had this done. You replace out a few components on the boards and stuff." And if you've never opened up one of these,
Oh,
I
it's a
won't do it
work
right
of
now,
art
but
inside.
it is, and it's all kind of stacked up inside. And I haven't looked yet to see where those components are, but I will be jumping into that because I'd like to take the chirp out of it if I can.
Yeah.
Um,
So that
uh,
radio has so I have one on my bench. I absolutely love it. And it's a fun little radio and it's within arm's reach of me. So it's easy for me to get um, diverted during my workday to play radio. And there are five circuit boards stacked on top of each other. But Thomas,
yep.
that radio is made with an awful lot of CMOS components. So before you even pick up a screwdriver, strap on with an anti-static strap to
I
protect
will
it.
do that. I will do that. And like with a lot of these radios, there are a number of unobtainium items in this,
Yeah.
right? And so you have to be really careful when you're messing with them, and you have to know that like it's possible that there's going to be an obsolete component that eventually you're going to fry or something.
I'll tell you now, Thomas, I don't know if you recognize this call sign or not, but he has one of the largest repositories of the Index Labs radio, WD8RIF.
Yes. Eric. Yeah, Eric is a dear friend. Yep. Yep.
Yeah, he has a wonderful set of technical notes that he's harvested over the years, and that he keeps on his website. So
It's a massive archive for that particular radio, and I'll make sure I put that in the show notes.
In the show notes, yeah. Oh, and the chocolate something place.
Chocolat Favoris.
Thank you.
Yeah. That's an important one.
That has to go into the show notes too.
And
I
so,
was waiting for a little break to mention that.
And so, Vince, what's on your workbench, buddy?
Oh, dude, I have been playing with Meshtastic again. So I am now getting ready for a trip to Hamvention, and I've been watching videos on how to configure Meshtastic. The most recent video of which it was either Josh or T.O. did a config video for, I want to say, Hamcation, and something about the short fast config and a few other things. And then Meshtastic version 2.6 has dropped out for a lot of devices, has dropped down in preview mode for a lot of devices. So it's still, for me where I live, it's still a solution in search of a problem.
Yes.
Which is a nice way to say there's not a lot of activity there, but I can see the functionality of it. And then the silliest thing happened. I spent money. And Lilygo has a new product called the T-Deck Plus. So I have a T-Deck, and I have a T-Echo, which is a little e-paper display, and I'm looking at it. It's hanging over there. I don't have it to show off tonight. But with the 2.6 update, the T-Echo's e-paper now lists your most recent messages. You don't have to open up your phone to see what your messages are. So 2.6 adds a lot of functionality that I have only just begun to explore. So if you want some really good expertise on Meshtastic, don't ask Vince. Go look at Ham Radio Crash Course. Go look at Temporarily Offline on YouTube, those two channels. And Josh and Steve will set you up right with your learning about Meshtastic, and even Digital Rancher, of course, he's big into Meshtastic. So any of those three folks will help you out. But with the T-Deck Plus, go ahead.
No, I was going to say, I wanted to see, you've got it there.
Well, yeah, I have the T-Deck Plus here, so I'll hold this up to the camera, and hang on a second. I have to do some video switching here. There we go. Put it into speaker view. And so this is the T-Deck Plus, and the T-Deck Plus, it is a nice thin form factor, and Lilygo ships it with a 2,000 milliamp battery inside of it. Now, the T-Deck Plus doesn't come with this holder, this carabiner, because that's my next topic. So it comes with a 1/4 20 mounting point on the back.
Nice.
And two little screws. Little screws that you can pop the case off and do things with. Now, it comes in two flavors, with an internal antenna, or as you can see, I've chosen for the external antenna. It comes with a GPS. So it's good battery life. The 2.6 upgrade is quite nice on it. So now to my next topic. I have been slowly acquainting myself with Tinkercad. So Tinkercad is a free 3D modeling, I hesitate to call it software, it's a website that you can create some models with. So I did some very careful measuring of what my T-Deck looked like, and I'm going to pop the screw off here.
And by the way,
T-Deck looked like.
Anybody who's just listening, a T-Deck looks very much like it reminds
me
of
a BlackBerry.
The BlackBerry, yes, I was going to say that.
Lilygo bought the rights to the keyboards, and these are BlackBerry keyboards.
Okay.
So the back of the T-Deck has got this lovely 1/4 inch 20 port on the back, and it's got a couple of holes where the screws sit. And so I took this as a challenge. I found on Thingiverse a bracket for my T-Echo that can hold a carabiner, and that's the upper half of the bracket that I've got here. So I took that and clipped it in the modeling software, and then I designed the triangular piece to fit the T-Echo. And so it's neatly offset. I'm a terrible modeler, as it turns out. But it's neatly offset, and there's a couple of little pegs that fit into the holes on the back of the T-deck. Can I do this while I'm talking? Yes, I can, so that it stays nice and firm in place. And the 1/4 20 screw just holds it in place, just like any other screw that you might have for a camera mount. And then from there, I can clip this. I can clip it on. If I put the screw in right, I can clip it onto my backpack, and then I've got my device within easy reach. Now the speaker that's in it is very quiet, but I'm so very happy with this bracket design, and I did it all myself. Except I had to borrow one part from somebody else. They call that a remix in the 3D modeling parlance. So
I love it though, and the fact that you could do that with, what I would call like a web application,
it's
uh, you
amazing.
know, is really impressive. And as I think I mentioned maybe in the last show that I had just donated my 3D printer to our radio museum, which in a way I get to actually use it even though it's not here because we're going to use it in the radio museum. So if I really need to print something, I could go do that. But it was taking up too much space here, and it there have been a fair amount of potty mouth words in the
No,
shack using that. Oh my goodness, getting the globs of filament and
yeah,
oh my, just it's just and but I've got so many friends like my buddy, our buddy Joshua N5FY, who's like a master with 3D
oh,
printing. He's so
is he
good,
ever?
and so many other people that really just know their stuff with these. And I keep thinking I just need to get over the learning curve and get to know it really well, and to be able to print something like that. But I love the fact that you made something like that. And are you going to take that file and put it back on Thingiverse?
It is already up on Thingiverse
Excellent.
as the second thing I have created. So yeah, I'm
Brilliant.
I'm I'm really quite happy for it.
That's
So
On the
very good.
3D on the 3D side, myself, what I went for was more of the SLA design 3D printers, and those are a lot of fun. You can get some real nice quality 3D printouts out of them, but they're messy. Oh,
Mm.
the liquid that you have to deal with gets all over the place, all over the tools.
uh,
That's my biggest problem with that. I still do all my design, but I get them manufactured because what I figured is that me printing those 3D enclosures, it would take me like 10 to get two or three good ones printed. Not the design, the design was fine, but the printout and tuning it up and all the time it took to do that. So
yeah,
I took it, sent it to a external provider that gives me much better quality, at my on my
yeah,
side.
yeah,
It was a
indeed,
lot of
Yeah.
fun to experiment with, but
yeah.
the mess and the time it took and everything it was not something that I could deal with.
No, indeed. All right, so that's what I've got on my workbench. We're going to take a pause for the cause, as I used to say in the music industry, and we'll be right back. Stay tuned. All right, and this is where we stop and take a break if we need to. I
We'll
make
take a quick
notes
bio
that,
break.
yeah, go for it.
Since we're normally we don't worry about it too much when it's just an audio podcast, but it's so obvious you're leaving when it's
When it's
video.
video.
So I'll do that. And yeah, great.
All right, and I'll hit pause, and I'll hit this button, and we're back in 5, 4. Welcome back to the Ham Radio Workbench. We are here with Richard VE2 Delta X-Ray as our special guest this evening. And Richard, you have a true experimenter spirit. That's the one thing I've learned in the time we've been speaking. You have a lot of products on the go. You've got some maple syrup on the go. You have a number of things, and I know what our audience would love to hear about are the tools you use and the challenges you face when you're designing some of these products. It's sure easy to go from idea to implementation, sometimes in a period of hours and sometimes a period of months. But I mean, tell us about your development tools and your development process. And if you happen to talk about some of your products along the way as examples, well, that's perfectly fine too.
Yeah, obviously there's a couple of different phases in the product design. A lot of the products are pure electronics and don't involve programming or anything like that. So those are mostly what I use are 3D designs for the enclosures, where I use SketchUp mostly. And I'm trying to flip over to something else because SketchUp now is getting to be very expensive. So I'm looking at FreeCAD and other tools like that to try to convert to them. I haven't made a decision yet where to go. Don't have time to. So uh, time is expensive, especially when you don't have any. On the electronic side, I use
KiCad.
KICAD. And the beauty of KiCad, if I flip over here, oops, no, the wrong way to do that, Richard. Yeah, let me share to you a couple of images from KiCad. The beauty of here we go, like this. So what I'm showing to you guys right now is the PCB design portion of KiCad, where you're basically seeing, and I can flip around the different layers and flip over to the other side. I'm able to move around and design and zoom. Obviously I'm dealing with SMD, so SMD is very uh, uh, image intensive, meaning that I basically work on a 40-inch monitor for this little 2x3 board that you're looking at right now. Some of the beauty of this is that you can also flip over fairly easily and get a 3D view of what you're working on, like this. This way, basically, I can, look at the process before I get it, get the product to produce and get the prototypes done. I can look for errors more easily with this 3D view, or flip everything around, take a look at everything on either side of the board and the positioning. I've encountered some issues sometimes where you don't think about literally these little 10 pin connectors. You don't think about the fact that some of the ribbon cables have an area on the side here to clip the
Oh,
cable in place.
the
Yes.
strain relief. Yeah, yeah.
Hmm.
Yes, the strain release. And that caused me some problems on the secondary board for this device, which is just above this connector. And the cable was hitting the power connector over here. So I had to totally change my batch of cables and put the other ones in the trash, so that I wouldn't have the problem with those strains reliever. So there's all kind of things. Obviously, you get to a point where you get the hardware are all assembled, tested. First one never works. Second one barely works, and about a fifth one, you normally have a good working product. And all of this is can be a little bit expensive, but it can also be a hell of a lot of fun, a lot more fun than doing the dishes, obviously. Uh,
How long have you been using KiCad? Because this is an application that we talk about a fair amount here on the workbench, and I know that George and Mark in particular, use it quite a bit. And what I mean, the learning curve for using KiCad, like what's that like when you first started using it?
Well, a good friend of mine, Rene, the Delta Fox 9 Golf Radio, the owner of Easy Rotor Control in Germany. Um, he's an engineer. He's actually a CEO of a PCB manufacturing plant, and he also has this little company on the side. And the first time I did my first board, and I tried to do it in SMD, I sent it to him and he started laughing his head off. And that was about 5 years ago. Uh, now, if you take a look at the board that's in front of you right now, I think I've went a long way from
You
that
have.
first very small board. And the obviously for me as a company, what's important is how fast and how easily and how time consuming is it to put this product together.
Sure.
And the idea of SMD and having everything, printed, assembled, getting it here and tested, everything is a lot easier with SMD. And it's also a lot more complicated when something doesn't work, trying to figure out, looking at the drawings within KiCad and looking at the board, trying to figure out what you did wrong, which is sometimes nothing, short of forgetting to link a pin to ground properly so the buzzer doesn't ring. That happened to me actually on this little guy. And, before I figured it out, I went, why isn't that buzzer working? And I'm looking at the code, and couldn't figure it out for the life of me. Firmware-wise, I've used two different approach. First one, for some of my M5 products. M5 is a great Asian company that makes very small. This is actually an ESP32. Look at the size of this thing. It's called an Atom.
Yeah, it's really tiny.
It's very, very, very small. Very few. Whoops, here we go. Very few pins, and a USB input and a couple of external pins. Well, there's a version of that that comes stacked on top of a HDMI interface, and I created an incredible product. There was a cavity at the bottom of that HDMI interface that was not used. So I designed a board, a very, very, very small board, which is actually a CI5 hub with 2 ports that fits in there and connects into this little connector right there. And created some code and turned around and was able to create a very simple CI5 to HDMI interface for ICOM radios, all the way back to the 756 Pro 3, all the way up to the 905. Nice. Beauty of it is, and then the beauty of it is inside this little box is an Bluetooth interface, a Wi-Fi interface, a processor, IOs, everything you need.
Wow.
There's some obvious limitation with memory and everything else, but this is an incredible product from M5 Stack.
That's what, an inch? It's like 1 inch square,
yeah,
sort of.
About 3/4 of an inch.
Right. That's very small.
And a little bit more than 3/8 in thickness. I used Visual Studio Code to code these things, and also to code the M5 Stack display. This is actually a 2-inch display that a big part of my product line is based on, again, for ICOM mostly, but soon for other manufacturers. And this was actually based on a design made by a Frenchman, and the original design was open source under a license that basically let us do whatever we want with it, including selling it. So at one point I offered it as, hey, I'll preload them for you guys. But the original designer got upset. So I turned around and I designed my own code in here. This is the code that's in there. Even though he likes to yell around that it's his, it's not. It's my code that I redesigned it, and it does a lot more than what his design did. So M5 was a big product line for us, and we're looking at the evolution of that probably toward the Raspberry Pi product line in the Pico product line over there, or the Zero product line. I'm not quite sure which one of the two I'm going to go with. but there's an evolution coming in that direction, especially for the HDMI interface. That's a big problem, is finding ESP32 that will support HDMI while the Pico already offers it. Not the Pico, but the Zero already offers it. The designs that I do, mostly when there is firmware, nowadays I use simply Arduino Uno to do some C++ programming for ESP32. It's a simple software. The new version is incredibly very nice and very powerful. Release 2.3.4. It does an incredible job, and it's a simple software, flexible. The libraries are easy to find or create, and it gives me the flexibility that I need. Sometimes you get, libraries that are getting mixed up, and you have to deal with that. Or if you reload your computer, good luck in reloading all the libraries. That's the biggest issue. But that's the same thing with Visual Studio. And the setup is easier to do than Visual Studio. I did prefer Visual Studio Code for some approaches, but I think it's a lot simpler, and learning curve is a lot easier with Arduino Uno to do the programming. Very flexible to do some changes, debugging, and whatever else. Push it, load it, test it. Doesn't work, okay, do the adjustment, keep on going. So obviously, when you get into products like this one, which is the new band decoder that's has a heck of a lot of electronics. That board is designed by me using KiCad. And I've got, actually, yeah, I showed you guys before the 3D image. The beauty is that you get the flexibility in your design as you approach them, as you work out the problems. Let me give you a small chart here that is very simple and really, I think, addresses a lot of, here we go. You guys seeing this?
Yeah.
Okay, so basically what I'm showing you guys right now for the podcast is a simple flow chart. You start with the idea on the left, you keep on going, create the scope, address the problems, find the solution, come back to the scope, adjust it, see if there's more problems. Keep going to the right-hand side into your development to create the product. That's bottom line. That's, a very, very simple way of expressing the process, but it addresses pretty much how I sit down with the idea, and the guy's calling me, hey, Richard, I need this. Can you find me a solution? And I turn around and I try to, address and adjust the scope until you get the final scope and you can start doing the development and the production. What's important for me was to also create some basic standards so that whenever I'm designing something, first thing I do is I always apply them. And that's where Through TTL comes in. Through TTL is a series of standards that applies to all my design to make sure that, because we're ham radio operators, I need to address shielding, filtering, signal processing. If I'm dealing especially with TTL, automatic leveling. By addressing those 4 steps, you get closer to a high quality product. Shielding, the PCB, whenever you look at any of my PCBs, any kind of real estate that's not used on the PCB is shielded and grounded. Filtering, every single signal is RF filtered. That means what? That means power. Yeah, obviously. That means your data signal. Yes, every single pin is RF filtered. But it also means every single ground, whether it's power, whether it's a signal, whatever the ground is coming from. And obviously, when you're dealing with RF, then you need to isolate the RF portion of the grounding away from the control portion. So there's different things in there that you need to deal with. Now, signal processing and automatic leveling, basically what I do there is I take a signal, and it's too bad we can't put the scope on the air. We would have a lot of fun. But when you look at the scope and you take a look at the signal coming into a device, quite often, whether it's a TTL, RS-232, whatever the signal is, it will have a lot of noise in it. And what people forget is that TTL is not a 5 volt signal. TTL, even RS-232, are voltage ranges. Okay, so 0 to 1.8, I think, and 2.4 to 5. I'm probably wrong with those numbers, but it's somewhere in that area. Well, most experimenters dealing with ESP32s, like this one, they need 3.3 volts. So they will regulate 3.3 volts. They get an output of the processor. Yeah, they'll put some interfacing to get it out there, but they'll leave it at 3.3. And according to TTL standards, that is 100% legal. But, and there is a but. The issue is we're ham radio operators. What do we deal with? What's all around us? RF, everywhere, everything we do. So our RF gets into the DC that we use. It gets into our TTL signals, RS-232 signals. So when you put the scope on it, what you'll see is not a nice and clean signal. Well, by going through the through TTL process, and through CAT and through CI5 are basically the variations of through TTL based on those protocols. By going through TTL, what I end up doing is I take that signal, and when I look at it before I give it or before I take it from the processor, it is nice square signals, okay? And it is easy to process within the processor itself, which makes it, keeping in mind my week and a half that I just lost looking for inverse signals.
Yep.
It makes it a lot of fun when you know that it's nice and clean and you don't understand why the processor gives you garbage. So yeah, this is the base of a lot of what I do in my products. You take a look at my 12-volt DC EMI RFI filters. Those babies are designed to literally get rid of everything. Again, I'm not dealing with TTL, I'm not dealing with data, but I'm dealing with power, I'm dealing with grounding, I'm dealing with interference in the power from switching power supply, voltage converters, inverters, generators, whatever is causing the issue. And let's not forget RF. And the design was so that we would get rid of most of that to create, again, based on a lot of the through TTL principles, create 3 stages. The input stage, the choking stage, and the output stage. The input output stages are basically the same. You could take that device, flip it around, use the input as the output and on, and you can still use it, no problem. The input and output stages are made of 3 sections. Filtering from positive to negative, filtering from negative to ground, and filtering from positive to ground. Now, each of these filtering sections are made up of 4 frequencies, actually 4 frequency ranges, basically capacitors. And these capacitors are of different values so that you make the range of what you want to get rid of as wide as possible. Obviously, we're talking about a low pass filter,
Right.
and you want to make sure that you address everything that will come in to affect you. So you take this, then you choke it into a very large high power choke, and then you go through the same thing again on the output. Now, you put this into an enclosure that's made of aluminum, so you get some shielding there. And then instead of using the regular covers on each side, a lot of my devices are designed in these boxes because I feel that they're a nice size and
sort of aluminum extruded sort of things.
Yes, it's an extruded aluminum, and it has these possibility of screwing it in place. And the beauty is the way, and the way they extruded it is that you can take the PCB, flip it, put it the other side, so you can install it this way or just sitting on the table. And when you take a close look at these designs, they're all made the same way. The front and the rear covers are PCBs.
Yeah.
The reason why they're PCBs, because I basically put shielding on both sides and I ground them.
Right.
Same thing inside. If there is a separator, like my 3 sections for the EMI RFI filters for DC, there are 3 sections. So there is a separator between each of them, and those are shielded on both sides. So in my EMI RFI filter on the main axis, you basically have 8 levels of shielding. On my PCB at the bottom, you got 2 levels. On the top and on the bottom, you got another 2 levels. So that's 4 on that axis, So that the idea is always keep in mind that you're dealing with RF. So because you're dealing with RF, you have to apply proper shielding, proper filtering principles, and you will every once in a while end up with, as you design version 1, version 2, version 4 up to 4 or 5, usually I hope by 5 that I'm done, you will end up forgetting to ground a pin somewhere that keeps a buzzer from working, or that keeps the circuitry, or God help us, goes up in smoke a couple of times in 1 or 2 versions. The important part is that the last version doesn't.
Yeah.
The important thing is that the last version does not. Another big thing that pushes me is my own mistakes for obvious reasons. The biggest one that I made was in the early days of the company. I needed to put an extra PTT on my 756 Pro 3. And the one of the PTT input was on those famous DIN connectors on the back of ICOM radios.
Oh, like the DIN 10s or the DIN 8s. Those little bastards that are so hard to solder that Vince's potty mouth makes 7 appearances because you only get the first pin right and the other 8. Yeah.
Yeah, that's when you don't mix up the wires, obviously. Well, the 756 had a DIN 7 and then DIN 8. It gets worse on the 7300. It has a DIN 13 connector. And on my 756 Pro 3, I needed that extra PTT. So nothing to it. Take a DIN connector, solder the 2 wires, bring it. You see me coming. I soldered the 2 wires to the right pins. Beyond what I didn't know is next to the PTT pin was the 13-volt pin. And the dummy that I am made a blob of solder that I missed between 13 volts and PTT. You do not want to do that.
Unless you want to let out the smoke.
A lot of smoke. I can tell you that the control board for a 756 Pro 3 creates a nice big black cloud.
Oh.
Yeah.
It probably doesn't smell like a scented candle, does it?
No, not at all.
It's a scented candle is burning electronics.
So that mistake.
It's a business opportunity.
I at that point I told myself I have to make myself a box. And that was in the early days of the company. And I
Mm.
was looking for new products. And I said, well, okay, that board is expensive. And, found a dead machine that I was able to buy at a fair price. And took the board out, sold the rest of the board to try to come back into my money. And that at that point, I went, okay, I gotta use. There's plenty of 8-pin, good quality cables, especially because they're used in audio quite often in the MIDI world.
Oh yeah,
So,
of course.
Yeah.
so I said, if I take a cable like that, I put a couple of good quality RF chokes and a shrink wrap at each end, I get myself a good RF filtered cable. Now all I got to do is make a box at the other end that will let me plug my damn PTT easily without blowing up anything. So I
Yeah.
created what's called an IAB, which is a ICOM auxiliary breakout box. A couple versions later, I now have a box that has both the 13 and the 8-pin connector on it, so that whatever you need, you just buy the one box and the proper cable and you hook it up, whether it's the 756 or 7300 or 706. And learning from my own mistakes again, I went and I said, okay, I need to make sure that guys do not plug two radios into the one box, because
Mm.
those connectors are basically interconnected. And I said, that's going to blow both radios, you know? And what I ended up doing in the 3D design of the enclosure, I basically put a little sliding door in front of the one connector. So you cannot
Right.
open both connectors at a time unless you rip that apart. And I did some nice big writing on the top saying, don't.
Yeah.
uh, so that was the creation of the IAB. Then I noticed the same need for Kenwood, so I created the KIB for Kenwood,
Mm.
and I'm gonna be coming out next year with the YAB, which is the Yaesu
Yaesu
version.
version.
Yeah,
You
there's
know, it's
some.
funny. I got to say that I want to go back to your little door idea to kind of foolproof something. That is the perfect example of uh, a product adaptation you do for field day. Because if
Yes.
someone is going to make that mistake, it is going to be on field day. And I think people don't think about that enough with a lot of amateur radio products that a lot of times, yeah, like if you're buying something for your shack or you're buying something for your own gear that you're using all the time, you know how to use it, you know how it hooks up. But when you take it to field day, you get people that they're trying their best and they're like, hey, this fits here. That's the same socket. I can do that. And they can release a lot of magic smoke on field
Oh
day
yeah.
doing that. So yeah,
Well,
that's really clever that you thought about that in advance.
Mhm.
see that, and you always, there's always a reason behind everything. At one point, I sat down, I created the 2x6 remote antenna switch. Basically,
Mhm.
Hmm.
bring up two coax, split
Yep.
it up on six antenna. Well, the problem is the way those antennas are selected is just put 12 volts on the right pin, and there goes the antenna. Except you can put both of them at the same time. If you put both antennas on both radios at the same time, you've got yourself a problem. And so I designed into the box so that you couldn't do that, but I needed to make sure to tell the operator that the box will refuse to do it. And it came up at first, I came up at first with an interlock card, which was basically a set of relays that when the first box grabbed the first antenna, if the second box tried to grab the same antenna, it would instead send that 12 volts to an output, which was an LED or a buzzer or whatever, to tell him, hey, you're doing something wrong.
Mm.
Okay, simple enough. Lack of flexibility was an obvious problem there. And that's when I started designing the band decoder. I turned around and I said, okay, well, band decoders. Band decoders are simple enough. One radio, 8 output. Okay, That's a band decoder. Get the frequency or the band or whatever and trigger the proper output to select the antenna or the bandpass filter maybe. Then I turned around and I said, why don't I do one radio, two sets of outputs? And I said, this way, one set of output can control the antenna. The other set of output with a different configuration can control the band decoders. Why different configuration? Simple. First set, let's say, has a tri-bander, 20, 15, 10 meters. That's one output. Okay, number 4. The second set is the band decoders. Well, those are 3 separate filters. So 1, 2, and 3 is 20, 15, 10. So when number 4 goes up for 20 meter, number 1 goes on the second one. And this way, my band decoder now controls both the antenna and the bandpass filters. And guys were very happy about that.
Sure.
Oh, yeah.
Then the SO2R guys looked at me and they said, yeah, but what am I gonna do about 2 radios? And I went, well, I got 2 sets of outputs. Why don't I do 2 inputs? So I'm bringing in 2 radios. I don't care who the manufacturer is. I'm bringing in 2 separate radios, and I got 2 sets of outputs. And I said, yeah, that will work. And that created basically a single box inside of one of these enclosures that has 2 sets of 8 outputs, 2 radios coming in, and turn around and I said, okay, now that whole interlock, why don't I create something in the software? Let's call it software-defined interlock, SDI, which monitors the first radio, monitors the second one. The first one that grabs a band, not an output, a band, is the owner. The second one turns around. The first thing you do before you give him an output is you tell him, go take a look at what the other guy is doing first. And he takes his frequency, compares it into the selection the other guy did. And if it matches, he goes, nope, sorry, I'm not going to trigger the output. I'm going to make you flash your output. I'm going to make you flash an alert. And then I get into BOA. Let's come back to that right after. And then BOA will alert the operator on what's going on. That's called software-defined interlock. BOA was another thing that actually it came out with that, remember that HDMI interface I did with this little guy? Well, unknown to me, a few months after it came out, partially blind operators started calling me going, oh, I really like your product. I went, you do? And he specifically says, because I can't see anything. And I'm going, how does an HDMI interface help you? He says, well, I can partially see. So instead of looking at this little display on the front of my radio, I'm looking at the 48-inch monitor beside me, and it helps me a lot. And he says, if you can come up with, yeah. And he said, you know, same thing with death operators. They all, you know, every once in a while they call me up and they say, can you create something to help us? And BOA was based on that. It's blind and deaf operator assistance. And what that does is, instead of simply beeping an error or, and then, you know, looking for a status, if you hit the front button, for requesting a status, you end up with CW that says number 1 and a number for the output, so 1, 4. Number 2, a number for the output, 2, 1. And if the guy does not understand CW, there's a decimal mode. So beep, 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 beep. That's 1, 4. Okay?
Right.
For the blind operator, he gets the same thing in flashing and also on the front display. And you can have a dual mode, which both of them are applied, the beeper and the flashing LEDs. And if there is an alert, basically he gets the information about the alert coming out, and this way you can understand what's going on and react to it. So, you know, you end up creating, and sometimes you go into too much creation, delaying the product. And I mean, I'm 1 year late on this one.
Ham Radio Workbench does not know what you're talking about. We
Yeah.
never creep our
Never,
scope.
ever.
We never over design anything. No, that's not what we do. Not
And
at all.
nobody in the ham radio world has a started project that he never ended about 25 years ago.
That's right.
Started 25 years ago and not ended? No, I don't have any of those.
No, me neither. You know, so again, it's always, I use a lot of the feedback at Orlando.
Sure.
You know, let's not talk about maple syrup, but that's an idea that was an
Sure.
overnighter, literally a white night blind, whatever. We stayed up all night, a guy and myself, and we went into back and forth about how to design this. And at the end of the night, before going back into ham caption, I had a scope of the design in front of me in my laptop. At ham caption again, a group from a DX association in Florida started asking me about a DX expedition they're planning and whether I could help them or not. And I said, yeah, that's cool. I mean, my 2x6 switches with this new decoder, I can offer that for you. He saw that. That's great. That's great. Except we're going to have 8 stations. I went, okay. 1 plus 1 equals 8. Okay. And as we were talking, you know, my wife always says, you know, you get into this weird look when you're talking to these guys. And literally what I was doing in my head, I was creating the scope of the project. And I said, when are you leaving? He says, well, in about 1.5 years. I said, okay, 1.5 years? Yeah, I can do that.
Wow.
The idea that came out during that conversation is, why don't I take my band decoders, 2 radios? Okay, that's cool. Instead of outputting in decimal in the back, you know, 1 output, 1 antenna, why don't I output in BCD? Step number 1. Why? Because in BCD, I can take my 8 output, split them up into 2 groups of 4, and that's 16 selections. Then I've got another set. That's another 16 for each of them. That's 64 outputs. I said, okay, that's for the antenna selection. That's cool, no problem. Now, what about the multiple radios? I address only 2 radios here. Well, this baby is an ESP32, like we said.
Yeah.
ESP32 comes automatically with Bluetooth and Wi-Fi. So let's create a closed network and make one of these guys the master. The other ones are the slaves, and have up to 6 of these guys side by side, talking to one another.
Yeah.
And then when somebody wants to grab one of the 16 antennas or 16 band decoders or whatever, and the antennas, let's say, might not be on the same antenna switch, but they're too close to one another. So you don't want somebody else to get on 20 meters while you're already on 20 meter. So
yeah.
band decoder number 1 on radio number 2 in here is using 20 meter. He already grabbed it. He's the owner. He shares the information with everybody, and the same principle applies. Radio number 7 on band decoder number 4 turns around and he says to the network, is anybody using 20 meters? This guy responds, yes, I am. Tough luck. And this guy gets an alarm saying, you can't use it. Either get him off it or do something else. So, you know, this is still in vapor land right now on exactly how I'm going to do it. But the principles are simple enough that I know that I'm able to do it. And I'm going to do my best to do this for these guys. Product wise, yeah, well, it's going to be both of those modifications are going to be the evolution of the dual radio design. and they're going to be offering for the larger contest stations or DX expeditions product that they're going to be able to use to make them manage their expedition or contest stations in a better way. So that, that's the process. It's middle of the night, like you were saying, Thomas.
Yep.
And Michelle, send me a messenger message. This is the idea, or just I'm just going to tell her one word, and that makes her freak out. How is that one word going to help you? I said that's a trigger word. That's going to trigger the idea that I got last night. Don't worry, just send me the one word. It's fun. That's the part. That's the best
It
part.
really
After,
sounds like so much of your product development and your ideas really do come from customers and from, of course, from your own experience, but a lot of times from customers meeting them at conventions. And I love the
yeah,
fact that I mean, I think that's the reason why I have such a fondness for amateur radio kind of mom and pop cottage industry manufacturers because
Yeah.
they are in response to real needs, and we were just talking about this earlier. I can't remember if we were recording or if it was or if it was before the show, but when I go to Hamvention, I really don't visit the big manufacturers very often, if at all, because I kind of know what they already have. They may have a new product or something. It's all the small manufacturers like you that have all these really interesting solutions
Yes.
that you go to and you're like, oh my gosh, that's going to make my life so much easier. Or I can declutter my shack by, using this intelligent box. I can, use a remote antenna switch. And what I really love, and especially I have a soft place in my heart here, is when manufacturers like you take into account people's disabilities, like people who are
Hmm.
visually impaired, people who have difficulties hearing. When you implement those, I can't tell you, I mean, just this week, I was able to, one of my readers reached out to me had asked me to ask him a smaller manufacturer if they could adapt a product so that people who are visually impaired, that it would give them feedback so they could operate it, not being able to see the display. And I said, hey, I know the contacts there. Let me just check and see. Again, a smaller manufacturer. They wrote and said, let's give some thought to this. We got to see if we've got enough kind of room on the processor, sort of thing, enough memory. And they came back just yesterday and said, yeah, we're going to do it. And I just thought, yay, because that's such a great win for people who
Nice.
really need that. And you would be
and
surprised
it
how
does
many amateur. It's
it doesn't take hundreds of hours. It
no,
doesn't take a lot of processor memory. Most of the time, a lot of these, a lot, not all, but a lot of these can be addressed by, you know, taking an alarm
yeah,
instead of doing a beep, doing
yep,
a beep, 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 you know.
yep, yep,
Uh, and again, you gotta keep in mind, yeah, he's blind doesn't mean that he understands CW.
hmm
So let's make
Right.
sure we offer him,
Yeah. I
offer him some flexibility.
I picked up on that when you said that earlier. You can report it back in CW, or you can report it back in decimal,
yep,
and that's super clever
yeah,
Yeah,
for sure.
and the biggest portion of, we were talking about what's on my workbench. This is it workbench, whatever.
Yeah, Workbench.
uh
Yep.
what am I working on this week? Well, I still got a few things to go, but bottom line, the next few steps are going to be putting together an easy way of doing the configuration. Probably going to go through a simpler way right now in this first version that will help me getting the product on the shelves faster, and in meanwhile keep on working on a web-based interface that's going to be much better. The idea is that walking somebody through installing a terminal software inside of a PC, attaching it to the USB port, and all this can be a
That's
headache.
difficult. Yes.
yep,
Yeah, it's the easy way to do it programming wise. And that's going to be the first step. The second step is going to be, okay, here's a very, very, very easy way to upgrade your firmware. And once your firmware is upgraded, now open your cell phone, call this IP address, and pop, there it is.
Yeah.
And that's going to be a lot easier. The issue is always time. Because of what happened to us last year, we're very, very late. Our resellers have been very, very flexible and gave us a lot of time to work on this, but I need to get it to them before Dayton. I need to make sure that they have it on the showpiece at Dayton so that they can obviously sell them the products. So I will probably go through a first release, which is going to be operational and easy to use and everything else, and then in version 2 early after Dayton or even by Dayton start implementing an evolution to the features. That's also, I guess, part of the development process. You got to make some decisions sometimes as a manufacturer. When do you get it out and
Yeah.
how you get it out? Sometimes with the SDR switch, the dual receive version, I came out with them, did all my testing in December. Everything was clean, everything was perfect. Ordered a batch of them from my manufacturer, knowing that they were going to work and knowing that they were doing proper QA validation of the product at the electronic level, not at the RF level. And I got caught with, they ended up with some counterfeit relays that were not up to spec. So we started releasing the first dual versions, which basically shares the RF on the transmitter and the SDR receivers. And the relays being wrong, the specs were not there. So I ended up getting them back, bringing them back, apologizing to my customers, reimbursing them, and decided basically to order the boards now without the relays and getting the relays myself at a known good quality supplier. Did a design change actually for a better relay. Also, the original relay was rated at 1.5 gig, and at the upper end of it, around 900 megahertz, there was a couple of things I didn't like for the 900 megahertz band. So I turned around and I got a set of relay instead that's going to go up to 5 gigahertz. So it's nice and smooth all the way up past 1.5. And that's going to make the product better. So, again, a delay there, but at least the product is going to be a lot better. So that makes a big difference for us. So sometimes you end up with that. You do not want to end up with that. You do not want to bring back products and reimburse your customers and apologize and everything else. I'm lucky because the ham radio community is incredibly understanding. The guys all told me, except for one, I think, out of probably 20 or so units that were sent, they all said, just don't worry. You need the money. Keep the money for now. Just send me the product when it's ready. I said, well, it's going to be probably a couple of months between January to, mid-April. Don't worry about it. We'll use it when we get it. Most of the response were like that. And that's great. I mean, that's great. The guys are incredible customers, and I really appreciate that.
That's awesome. Richard, what a wonderful overview of the, I hesitate to call, but really the creative process behind how you're bringing these to market. Is there anything else we should ask you tonight?
Good question. when do I sleep?
It sounds like that is a really good question, because it sounds like you never sleep. And when you wake up, you give your wife, an order to send you something to remind you of something the next day. So it sounds like you never sleep.
When does your wife sleep if she's always awake waiting for your ideas?
I actually wake her up every once in a while. Not too often, but I'm lucky she's the one with the iPad, so I have to wake her up so that she can send me the message, which she doesn't
Uh,
find too funny.
there are these things called pencils and
Pencils.
notebooks, and I've heard of these people keeping them beside their bed. I'm just saying.
The other thing that I figured out the hard way at Dayton is that there actually are bathrooms at Dayton.
Yes.
And my wife's main job, because obviously on the technical side, she's not there. She's mainly there to help me, and she's been very helpful. And her main job at Dayton is after every couple of hours is to start yelling at me, Richard, you gotta get to the bathroom. Because it gets incredibly busy at
It's
Dayton.
Yes, it
intense.
does.
It's very intense.
And it was the same thing at M Caption. Boston Amex Position is also, I think, a very nice convention, the ARL convention over there.
Yeah.
And we're getting more and more of the larger manufacturers showing up over there. That's going to be a good problem for them because the manufacturer demo area is already full and they're getting more manufacturers in, so they got to figure out a way to make that room bigger. There's actually a that the convention is in the hotel itself, and there's literally a convention center that's empty next door to it. So if it gets way too big, they've got a convention center that's probably about two-thirds the size of AmCaption. So
Wow.
that's a good expansion for them, possibilities over there. Let's hope they get to that point.
Yeah.
Yes.
The guys are doing a great job over there, and it's really coming along. I've been going there for 3 years now, and I've got a very good relationship with them, and they've been very helpful.
That's
Yeah.
awesome.
Yeah. They've
Well,
actually, they're very organized there too. And I'm looking forward to going this year. So I'm looking forward to hopping up there and seeing what it's about. I know Mark's been there. This will probably be his second
oh,
year.
to Boston. Yeah.
Yeah, it'll be a second year going there, and it'll be good. It'll be good to see you there too. So
Yeah.
Yeah. We're hoping possibly. We're negotiating right now, but hopefully we might also make it down to Alabama to the I always say Huntsville.
yeah, Huntsville.
Huntsville.
Mhm.
Yeah,
Yeah.
the Huntsville Ham Fest over there.
It's
It
a
depends
wonderful
on.
one. It's just right before the Boston one, like the week
That's
before,
right.
isn't it? Yeah.
Yeah,
But it's
yeah.
a, it's a wonderful one. It's a huge indoor event center. The Von Braun Center's wonderful. The people there are amazing. All the people who work with the Hamfest are very friendly. It's well attended. It's air conditioned, which you want in Huntsville, Alabama in August. Let me
I
promise
can't
you
imagine
that.
why.
Oh my goodness, the
Yes.
humidity, you could cut it with a knife there that time of year. And it's so it's a really great experience. You can make it a road trip and go down and spend a week going up to Boston. And don't forget to pack a bunch of cans of Chocolat Favoris in the car
But
because you can
somehow
buy
keep
little
them
There's
cold.
only one problem. They're going to be melted by then.
They
No,
have
they
to
will.
keep them
They will.
cold.
They will.
Well,
The yeah, we're in middle of negotiating with a couple of the larger resellers and
Good.
a couple of mid-sized resellers also in the US. And Huntsville obviously has a very large one over there that they told us basically they're interested in our product line, and if we make a deal, they want us there. So I said, that's great, no problem. We'll be there. The We'll probably fly down. At first, we were thinking of making a round trip of the RV down to Huntsville back to Boston.
mm,
But I think the weekends like that, like Boston, we were already doing by driving from Montreal with our car, no RV, no nothing, and it's easier to do so. But it's a little bit too far for Huntsville, just
Yeah.
like it was for Orlando. So we're probably going to fly down. Then we found a way of literally, and for those guys that saw me at Orlando, there was a heck of a lot of stuff in that booth. well, that fitted into 2 duffel bags.
Wow.
It was fun. We had a problem flying back. The duffel bags were too heavy because of some of the shopping I did, but that's another story.
That happens.
Oh,
Yes,
well,
it did.
That happens.
well,
But
indeed.
I got a very nice bird meter out of it.
Ooh,
So
those are not lightweight.
No, they are
This-
not.
no, they're very heavy duty and they're very nice. Uh,
Yeah,
good news
indeed.
is right now what I need are the cartridges, not the whole meter. So that's going to
right.
be less weight.
Yeah, you become a slug collector.
A
I,
slug.
I
Hmm.
I thought I
Yeah,
thought about getting a bird. I have a Telewave 44 AP, and it's a wonderful meter, and it needs no slugs, but it doesn't go much below 25 megahertz.
yeah.
So
Hmm.
that's the drawback to it. But it's a wonderful meter, and
Hmm.
I carry it in my
I
RF
was
kit.
surprised. I was surprised how hard the HF slugs are to get for the birds.
Hmm.
Yeah,
Very,
they're
very
because they're
hard.
very popular. They're very in
Yeah,
demand. Yeah, especially the QRP slugs. The 25-watt, 5-watt slugs. They're very hard to find. So, well, Richard,
yeah.
it's been an absolute joy to have you here with us this
Yes.
evening for the podcast and for video. Thank you so much for coming out. If people want to get a hold of you, what's the easiest way?
Well, everything is on the website at www.ve2dx.com. And obviously, you can also reach me by the phone number. It's on there by mail, obviously, if anybody still uses mail, and by email at ve2dx@hotmail.com.
Perfect. Thanks very much, Thomas.
Thanks for the invitation.
Thank you,
Thank
Thomas.
you.
What about you?
Well, if you'd like to reach me, I am on Mastodon, where you can find me at QRP or at mastodon.radio. I also am a very regular visitor of QRPer.com
I can't imagine
because,
why.
yeah, can you imagine why? And on YouTube, you can find me at K4SWL. Just search for that. If you're looking for some videos to help you with your insomnia, that's the place to go. Yeah.
That's
How about you,
awesome.
Vince?
Well, you can
Just
you Richard, go ahead, please.
oh, sorry about that.
Hmm.
I really need to brush up on my Instagram and whatever else. But one thing that you do want to look for in regards to myself are two things. First, the YouTube channel,
Hmm.
which is basically just look for V2DX and you'll end up on it. A lot of the process that I put in my design, that's what we've been talking all night, is in there. And you get some great videos also of some of the new design. And finally, forgot about my, not podcast, but my blogs on my website. That's where I normally will announce all the new arrangements
Hmm.
and all the new
Awesome.
products and all this. So the updates are coming to you directly from that. Sorry about
Awesome.
that. I forgot
Oh,
about those.
no, that's very important for our listeners to know for sure.
Yeah,
All right. Well, from all of us at the Ham Radio Workbench, we'll say 73 now. 73.
seven threes, and as Mark would say, be good humans.
Bonsoir.